Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, Chapter 9, entitled Answers Citing the Lord's Version, text number 20 and 21. Please repeat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Tvayaham Toshita Samyag. Veda Garbha Shishri Kshaya. Chiram Britena Tapasa. Dustosha Kuta Yoginam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Tvayaham Toshita Samyag. Veda Garbha Shishrikshaya. Chiram Britena Tapasa. Dustosha Kuta Yoginam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Tvayaham Toshita Samyag. Veda Garbha Shishrikshaya. Chiram Britena Tapasa. Dustosaha Kuta Yoginam.
Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Tvayaham Tushita Samyag.
Tvayaham Tushita Samyag.
Veda Garbha Shishrikshaya.
Veda Garbha Shishrikshaya.
Yam Gritena Tapasa.
Nam Pritena Tapasa.
Dustosha Kuta Yoginam.
Dustosaha Kuta Yoginam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Tvayaham Tushita Samyag. Veda Garbha Shishrikshaya. Chiram Gritena Tapasa. Shri
Bhagavan Uvacha. Tvayaham Toshita Samyag. Veda Garbha Shishrikshaya. Chiram Britena Tapasa. Dustosaha Kuta Yoginam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Tvayaham Toshita Samyag. Veda Garbha Shishrikshaya. Chiram Britena Tapasa. Dustosaha Kuta Yoginam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. The all-beautiful personality of Godhead said.
The all-beautiful personality of Godhead said.
Tvaya, by you. Aham, I am. Toshitaha, pleased. Samyak, complete. Vedagarbha, impregnated with the Vedas. Shishriksaya, for creating. Chiram, for a long time. Britena, accumulated. Tapasa, by penance. Dustosaha, very hard to please. Kuta Yoginam, for the pseudo-mystics. Translation. The beautiful personality of Godhead addressed Lord Brahma. O Brahma, impregnated with the Vedas, I am very much pleased with your long accumulated penance with a desire for creation. Hardly am I pleased with the pseudo-mystics. Please repeat. The beautiful personality of Godhead addressed Lord Brahma. O Brahma, impregnated with the Vedas, I am very much pleased with your long accumulated penance, with a desire for creation. Hardly am I pleased with the pseudo-mystics. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. There are two kinds of penance, one for sense gratification and the other for self-realization. There are many pseudo-mystics who undergo severe penances for their own satisfaction, and there are others who undergo severe penances for the satisfaction of the senses of the Lord. For example, the penances undertaken to discover nuclear weapons will never satisfy the Lord because such a penance is never satisfactory. By nature's own way, everyone has to meet death. And if such a process of death is accelerated by anyone's penances, there is no satisfaction for the Lord. The Lord wants every one of His parts and parcels to attain eternal life and bliss by coming home to Godhead. And the whole material creation is meant for that objective. Brahma underwent severe penances for that purpose, namely to regulate the process of creation so that the Lord might be satisfied. Therefore the Lord was very much pleased with him. And for this, Brahma was impregnated with Vedic knowledge. The ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge is to know the Lord and not to misuse the knowledge for any other purpose. Those who do not utilize Vedic knowledge for that purpose are known as Kuta Yogis, or pseudo-transcendentalists, who spoil their lives with ulterior motives. And then we have text number 21 also. Varam varaya badrante varesham mabivanchitam brahman shreya parishramaha pumsam mad darshanavadi. Translation: I wish you good luck, O Brahma. You may ask from me, the giver of all benediction, all that you may desire. You may know that the ultimate benediction as a result of all penances is to see me by realization. Report by Srila Prabhupada: the ultimate realization of the Supreme Truth is knowing and seeing face to face the personality of Godhead. Realization of the impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma features of the personality of Godhead is not ultimate realization. When one realizes the Supreme Lord, one does not struggle hard to perform such penances. The next stage of life is to discharge devotional service to the Lord just to satisfy Him. In other words, one who has realized and seen the Supreme Lord has attained all perfection, because everything is included in that highest perfectional stage. The impersonalists and pseudo-mystics, however, cannot reach this state. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjala Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Gena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This section of the Bhagavatam is actually very crucial in the sense that this pastime is establishing the authority of the Vedas and its origin. We were having some discussion yesterday with some devotees and how so many theories are put forth as to the origin of existence and which civilization over which other civilization has factual knowledge. But here it's so clearly presented in this beautiful pastime. Lord Brahma, who is the first created being, and we all know the story, how he manifests from the lotus flower and then he's searching out his own existence. So he is setting the example for all of us, beginning with his tapa, with his austerity, his penance. And as a result of his penance, he receives a darshan of the Supreme Lord appears to him, along with the whole manifestation of the spiritual world of Vaikuntha's. And he's impregnated with the Vedas. He's impregnated with all knowledge. And this was facilitated because he pleased the Lord through his penance. And here Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in the purport that there are two kinds of penance. There are penances that are self-centered, and then penances that are God-centered. Those who are busy and simply trying to increase their level of enjoyment, either with the senses or with the mind, or their so-called well-being, up to the point of liberation, is self-centered. Whereas those who are busy in trying to please the senses of the Lord, to please his mind, making wonderful arrangements, like we hear these beautiful pastimes that are arranged daily by Tulsi Devi for the pleasure of Krishna, trying to do his will. This is penances and austerities performed for the pleasure of Krishna. So, unfortunately, all these pseudo-mystics and gross materialists are preoccupied with penances that ultimately meet with destruction. So the demons, that they say that the world is unreal. So how do we interpret that? Well, it's unreal in the sense that they say, oh, well, it's temporary. There's no purpose behind it, so let me just enjoy as much as I can. And manipulate the material energy in various ways that we can enjoy. Or else there are those who are just trying to escape it entirely. Say, oh, this world is unreal, so not only are they trying to negate the world, and in that sense trying to destroy the world, they're just negating it, but they're negating themselves also. They want to be confronted with that sense of individuality, that I'm a person. So let me just negate that also. So whether it's the gross materialist or the impersonalist, it's all about avoiding everything out, not taking responsibility, not being stewards. Brahma's creation. And Bhagavad Gita informs us, Krishna says, their intelligence is lost, and they endeavor with works that are meant to destroy the world. Of course, they do have intelligence, but under Krishna's Mahamaya, under Krishna's illusion, their intelligence is spoiled. Prabhupada here gives the example of creating nuclear weapons. All they can do is accelerate the rate of death and creating unnecessary havoc, and actually so much cruelty, both to animals and human beings. This has been going on. And especially in this age, of course. Up until the Industrial Revolution, things were pretty much, let's just say, sustainable in some ways. But now with the advent of the Industrial Revolution, so much has been created, creating so much havoc. People complained about the horses because of the smell, right? So they decided, let's just do away with the horses. We now know how we can manipulate this material energy and create a machine that will get us to our destination quicker. And we don't have to deal with the smell. We don't have to deal with the horse's temperament. I've never really worked with horses. Maybe you have. You know, you're dealing with a sentient being. So that becomes cumbersome. At least that's the way materialists see it. They don't realize that actually these relationships are actually very conducive to spiritual life. But no, dealing with animals is really cumbersome. It can be very moody, and so let's just do away with it. And in that sense, the animal becomes objectified. So that gives reason to unnecessarily kill animals. And because their whole objective is objectivity, they create the machine, and what do they end up with? Now they just realize, well, now they have been realizing over the years, but it's so much encroachment in material nature to sustain all this. I mentioned this before, I believe I'll go over it again briefly, but there were studies made in the 70s how the average person traveled so many miles a year, and it required so many hours to do so. So if you divided that, it came to about 5 miles per hour. So people were going 5 miles per hour in the 70s, and we know that spiritual principle versus material principle. Material principle means you keep going backwards. The more you try to solve the problem, material problems, the bigger the hole you deep. So they were going 5 miles an hour back then. We're going much less now. Probably going backwards. Oh, anyway. Pollution, coal. I heard this, I'd never heard this before, but coal ash. Tapapunch had brought it up one time to me. They spread coal ash on the roads. Well, in the 70s, there was a clean air pact that was established. That now coal could not just be spewed out through smokestacks, which was really like obvious. You could see it coming through the smokestack, black soot. So somehow or other they need to recuperate it. But now there's a silent killer because all that coal ash is put into ponds that are supposed to be lined with, there's liners, and then they put this. But when you think about it, this coal is being used for factories to generate steam, which requires water. So these factories are right next to major rivers all over the country. There's about 500 of these major ones. So these coal ash pits, and most of them are not lined. And this ash contain arsenic, lead, mercury, cadmium, chromium, all non-biodegradable ingredients that are just polluting the waters. And there have been incidents, or I should say accidents, horrible accidents that took place in 2008, one in Tennessee. 5.5 million metric feet or something. Just burst. The banks just burst and it spread all over the place. People working trying to clean up their mess, became sick. Devastation everywhere. So much devastation. One is being threatened now in Alabama. It's like considered like the Amazon of North America. This watershed in Alabama. Big factories. 10 times greater than the accident that took place in Tennessee. The volume, 20 million metric feet of coal ash. 10 times, 4 times. But at any rate, so this is going on. All of this as a result of deviation, gradual deviation from the intended blueprint for how human beings to live in this world. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures, Lord Brahma, sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu and blessed them by saying, by performance of this sacrifice, you shall attain all desirable things. Everything will work in harmony. But through disregard of such sacrifice, the result is bondage. In the next verse, verse 21, I was reflecting on the word realization, and I looked it up in the dictionary. What does it mean to realize? Maybe I can get some feedback here. I just got the dictionary definition, but I'd like to hear Vaishnav definition. Perhaps some of you, through your own experiences. What does it mean to realize, this realized knowledge? Here's the context. I wish you good luck. You may ask from me, the giver of all benediction, all that you may desire. You may know that the ultimate benediction as a result of all penance is to see me by realization. To see me by realization. Any thoughts on that? Gaur Shakti Prabhu?
Tattvadarshana.
Tattvadarshana.
Tattvadarshana from Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
The Pranipatena Parparshana Sevya Upadekshanti Te Jnanam Jnanina Tattvadarshana. When it was seen inside, when it was seen inside the absolute truth, different levels, you know, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan realization.
The one who has seen the absolute truth through these different levels, different features of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan realization. And that realization comes from, we could say initially, from hearing. Knowledge is heard, so there's information, and then there's applied knowledge. So what do I do with that information? So I hear that chanting the holy name will make one happy. Will help one rise above the dualities. We chant the holy name, so I hear this, so then, okay, let me try it out. We chant the holy names. So this is applied knowledge, and then realization is, it becomes real. It becomes tangible. It becomes clear. The definition in the dictionary was to have a clear grasp and understanding, that a vivid becomes vivid. So we experience it. It's tangible. Our senses become, everything becomes involved. And the mind and the senses. It's practical. So, and what makes it this realization possible in this particular case for Lord Brahma and to all those who follow is that connection, is that personal connection. Without this personal connection, then it's like an electric wire that's not really plugged into the wall. So there's no actual benefit. It has just becomes theoretical knowledge, academics, and so on. So we may know so much academically about the structure of the universe, material nature, how it works, how I'm implicated through karma, and all this knowledge, yes, is wonderful and it's good, but unless the ultimate purpose is understood, and what is that ultimate purpose? What is the ultimate goal of the Vedas? Krishna describes this, that by all the Vedas I am to be known. I am the compiler of Vedanta, the end of knowledge, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So ultimately Krishna is to be understood. And not only understood, but here specifically, Krishna must be pleased. And how do we please Krishna's devotee? Krishna's himself, we must please his devotee. Yes, Prabhu?
I was just saying, I was thinking about what you were just saying. I read the other day, I think it was CC.
Because people are really...
Wait, just wait to get the microphone in.
I was reading the other day in CC, he's basically saying that scholars and learned men, they can study and study and study, but that's not exactly, that they can still not know the absolute truth, and through devotional service to me and my devotees will they attain the absolute truth.
Yes. So the element of bhakti must be there in the performance of karma, in the performance of gyan, in the performance of astanga, or whatever. Unless the seed of bhakti is there, then there's ultimately hasn't come to the end of Vedanta, the true meaning of Vedanta. And uncovering, discovering, it's the constitutional position of all living entities. So to be united with Krishna, and knowingly or unknowingly, everyone is pursuing this. And we're so fortunate because we have such great examples of those who have come to extremely high levels of realization and interaction, loving relationship with the Lord. The encounters of the Goswamis with Mahaprabhu. Example of Rupa Goswami, who was working in Ramakeli for Hussein Shah, and eventually just gave it all up in pursuit of bhakti. And we have this beautiful pastime where he is sent to Vrindavan, he and Sanatan, with the instructions of reviving the lost places and and to write. And Rupa Goswami, well, both he and Sanatan were in Mathura, and daily Rupa Goswami would go to Vrindavan, and he was always searching for his deity. He was in search of his deity. Sanatan Goswami already had his deities, Madan Mohan. And Rupa Goswami was searching for his deities. Now, the deities of Madan Mohan and Govindaji and Radha Gopinath had been carved by the great-grandson of Lord Krishna, Brajanava, under the supervision of Mother Uttara. But over thousands of years, they were unmanifest with time. So Rupa Goswami was in search of his deity, and one day he was wandering, and he was just crying out in separation of Lord Chaitanya. So he sat beneath this tree, and he wrote 8 beautiful verses in praise of Lord Chaitanya. And around that time, one coward man named Govindadas appeared. And he came to inform Rupa Goswami about Rupa Goswami's cows. So it was asked, well, how come Rupa Goswami had all these cows? He had 500 cows. And he's a monk, he's a renunciant. But Lord Chaitanya had given him instructions that when you go to Vrindavan, you take care of the sages there. So we all know the story where he had accumulated a lot of wealth in the service of Hussein Shah and had given some to Sanatan Goswami, but he had also kept some gold coins. So with this he was able to get cows, and he would be able to supply milk to the sages. So this Govindadas, this coward man, told Rupa Goswami, and Rupa Goswami was actually in meditation. And he said, Goswami, there's one cow, there's one go. And they were talking in the local language, Brajabasi language. So he says, your go. One of them has been giving milk. Incessantly, all her milk is going into the top of the hill. And I hear her crying loudly. I've seen this so many times. And Rupa Goswami made a connection in his mind when he heard go, and it broke out of his meditation. And to break out of the meditation, the word was Vinda. So he put the two words together, Govinda. And for him, that was an indication that he would soon see his deity. So he listened to this person talk about this incident of this cow on the top of the hill, just giving her milk to the hill. And so they went up there, and there was a hole in the top of the hill, and everything was really moist. And so Rupa Goswami called upon all the villagers to help dig, and they started to dig and dig and dig and dig. And some of you may have heard this pastime through Indradumna Swami, who's had access to the Vrindavan Research Institute. So there's a lot more details in the pastime. And he was mentioning that he has told the pastime many times before, that they dug and then they came to the Lord Krishna's top knot, right? But how far did they dig? It is stated, I don't know the Sanskrit, but anyway, there's a document showing that it was 5 stories. They dug 5 stories down, and then they came to Govindaji. And they were able to do so also because actually the soil was very moist. And there's records saying that it was actually for years that the cow had been giving her milk in that spot. So the soil was very moist, so they were able to dig down. And of course, when he saw the deities, Rupa Goswami was standing there he had a stick in his hand and he was shaking. And some tears were coming from his eyes that there was a pool of water at his feet. He was in such ecstasy. Actually, that reminds me of an incident yesterday. Mother Jagamohini was speaking with one person who was singing, and I happened to notice that she was speaking with someone who was just crying. We'd love to hear that story. Would you care to share that? What took place? This was during book distribution.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. So we were, I can't remember the name of the town.
Speak louder.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So we were at book distribution in a town about 2 hours away. They had like a Christmas fair over the weekend, and so it was the last day yesterday. And there was few people coming, and then I noticed this lady, she had this dream catcher picture on her t-shirt, on her sweatshirt.
You had a what?
Dream catcher.
It's like an Indian...
Native American.
Yeah, a dream catcher. So I just went, oh, you got a nice dream, that's a nice dream catcher. Well, she came over, and she said, she said, what do you have? And I was there serving the samosas. Oh, we have samosas, we can try some. Oh, she said, I bet you have some books. She said, actually, one of your friends went to stop me, but I had my hands full, she said, so I couldn't actually stop. But now you stopped me, so I explaining about Bhagavad Gita. So I said, it's the oldest yoga book in the whole of the world. It's the ancient teachings. And so I just read a little bit. I said, let's open up the page and read the oldest language, the mother of all languages. That's called Sanskrit. So I started to do that, and she just burst into tears. She was hearing, she didn't, hear the English language, the translation, so we told her language. So I had to go around and console her because she was completely beholden, because she said, you now Krishna is connected with Krishna. So
That's powerful sound vibration.
some people do this, and notice that because they've been searching. And it happened to me when I received Prabhupada's book. So my grandparents had Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita on their bookshelf for 35 years, and my mum found. And she said, "There's a book for you." So as soon as I opened the book and saw Prabhupada, I burst into tears, and she said, "Why are you crying?" I think, and I wanted to say was, "He's been giving me all the answers I've been waiting, since young." She was feeling the same. So
Realization.
Yeah.
realization, yeah.
Can you go over that a little bit? I don't know why I couldn't understand what you were saying. I couldn't understand it either.
Well, she was explaining how there was an encounter with this woman at the fair yesterday, or the festival in this small town in east of Pittsburgh, and a woman came up. She had a dream catcher in her T-shirt, and then so she commented on it. Mother Jagamohini commented on it, how pretty it was, and then they began to talk. And after she showed the Bhagavad Gita to her, and when she showed the Bhagavad Gita and began to spoke the words, you spoke them in Sanskrit also? You spoke them in Sanskrit, and the woman just burst into tears. And I remember I was chanting, and I noticed, I saw that, and I said, this woman was just in tears. And then, this sound vibration, who knows what was going on in that person's life. But when we get connected to that source, obviously, it has an impact. We're ready for it, and we're not. So what would be the ingredient that would obstruct that? We could be hearing that sound vibration just like that woman did, and yet, fear.
Contaminated senses.
Yeah, I guess the list is endless. So many things. Yeah. Actually, one of my favorite verses: being freed from attachment, fear, and anger. Those three impediments. And actually, that fear runs so deep. That fear, Prabhupada describes it so beautifully in that verse. That this fear is the fear of being a person. It's just so much easier to the conditioned soul. It's just easier to the conditioned soul to just deny, to just not deal. I don't want to deal with it. Pleasure is good, but pain is not. But because the devotee's fortune is because of understanding through the mercy of Guru, the philosophical import of pleasure and pain is that they both have their source in Krishna. So what we call pain in this world actually can be a great impetus to just run to Krishna, Whereas for the materialists is to try to cover it over whatever is possible. Any type of pain, we just see how many pills. Prabhupada was describing I think it was in New York, or maybe it was in England, all the advertisements for painkillers, in the subways. And then he was saying, in India there's only one, there's only one pill back then. But you see in America, so many pills are being advertised to cover up the discomforts in this world. And what to speak of all the distractions, again, to cover up, to make us numb, to make us non-beings, At any rate. Yes.
Speaking about fear, there's in the third canto, 12th chapter, I believe it's the second verse. Lord, I'm not sure who's speaking. I think it's my Mary Mooney. But he's explaining, the speaker is explaining that before Lord Brahma created any of these species of life, he created the conditions under which the species would live. And the verse is, Brahma first created the nescient engagements like self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. In the purport, Prabhupada explains that therefore the first condition of material existence is forgetfulness of one's real identity. And by forgetting one's real identity, one is sure to be afraid of death, although the pure living soul is deathless and birthless. So fear is fundamental to the material existence. And if one can actually become fearless, then by definition, according to what Prabhupada is saying here, then one has to be out of the bodily conception of life. And the corollary is, if one is thinking that I'm this body, then naturally they're going to be afraid of death, because it's
part of it. Yeah, that's just, there's no way of getting around it as long as we're thinking this false identity. Yeah. And yes.
Who was it? Was there someone?
I didn't see anybody. But I something else that had come to mind that I wanted to mention in class in regards to the course that modern civilization has taken in terms of destruction and chaos. And in 1854, there was a letter written by the president at the time, Pierce, and he wrote a letter to Chief Seattle, northwestern United States, asking they would like to buy 2 million acres of land. And he wrote back such an amazing letter in terms of environmental, the aspect of it. And just because the whole concept of owning land was foreign to them. How can we sell you land and water and sky? We don't have that conception. You want to put us in a reservation, and then and this chief also illustrated the havoc that the white race was imposing, and one of the sentences was continue with this contamination, and you will die in your own bed in suffocation. You will suffocate in your own bed. And it's like
When you say continue, when
you continue to contaminate your bed, then at one night you will suffocate in it.
meaning the earth.
Yeah. Yes, he was referring to the earth. He was referring to the slaughter of all the buffalo. They were slaughtering all the buffalo. He went so far as to say to tame all the white horses, to tame all the wild horses, to tame them, to slaughter the animals, and when the fields are dotted with talking wires, all the talking wires. He was referring to telephone lines all over the place. So they used these terms back then. They were referring, like the iron horse was the locomotive. So they had a lot of prophecies, a lot of predictions, and of course, which came to pass. Yeah.
I have the letter. You want to read it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not too long. Yeah, I had the paper at home. I should have brought it. Man. I wrote another one sometime back. It's not the same one as this. Chief Seattle's letter. The president in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land. But how can you buy or sell the sky, the land? The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Every part of the earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every meadow, every humming insect. All are holy in the memory and experience of my people. We know the sap which courses through the trees as we know the blood that courses through our veins. We are part of the earth, and it is part of us. The perfumed flowers are our sisters. The bear, the deer, the great eagle, these are our brothers. The rocky crest, the dew in the meadow, the body heat of the pony, and man all belong to the same family. The shining water that moves in the streams and rivers is not just water, but the blood of our ancestors. If we sell you our land, you must remember that it is sacred. Each glossy reflection in the clear waters of the lakes tells of events and memories in the life of my people. The water's murmur is the voice of my father's father. The rivers are our brothers that quench our thirst. They carry our canoes and feed our children. So you must give the rivers the kindness that you would give any brother. If we sell you our land, remember that the air is precious to us, that the air shares its spirit with all the life that it supports. The wind that gave our grandfather his first breath also received his last sigh. The wind also gives our children the spirit of life. So if we sell our land, you must keep it apart and sacred, as a place where man can go to taste the wind that is sweetened by the meadow flowers. Will you teach your children what we have taught our children, that the earth is our mother? What befalls to the earth befalls all the sons of the earth. This we know, the earth does not belong to man, man belongs to the earth. All things are connected, like the blood that unites us all. Man did not weave the web of life, he is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. One thing we know, our God is also your God. The earth is precious to him, and to harm the earth is to heap contempt on its creator. Your destiny is a mystery to us. What will happen when the buffalo are all slaughtered, the wild horses tamed? What will happen when the secret corners of the forest are heavy with the scent of any man, and the view of the ripe hills is blotted with talking wires? Where will the thicket be? Gone. Where will the eagle be? Gone. And what is to say goodbye to the swift pony and then hunt? The end of living and the beginning of survival. When the last red man has vanished with this wilderness and his memory is only the shadow of a cloud moving across the prairie, will these shores and forests still be here? Will there be any of the spirit of my people left? We love this earth as a newborn loves its mother's heartbeat. So if we sell you our land, love it as we have loved it. Care for it as we have cared for it. Hold in your mind the memory of the land as it is when you receive it. Preserve the land for all children and love it as God loves us. As we are part of the land, you too are part of the land. This earth is precious to us. It is also precious to you. One thing we know, there is only one God. No man, be he red man or white man, can be apart. We are all brothers after all.
They probably thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. How they believed in God? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
They believed in one God.
Absolutely.
They did.
Yeah. There's so much reference to
We called them savages.
Tunkashila, Wakantanka, one God.
But did they have a personal conception of God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
No, we're talking about how they
you know, the difficulty is as theirs is an oral reception. They didn't have a writing. But I mentioned this before. You take the word Sheila. When they do sweat lodges, Native American sweat lodge, they bring the stone in. It's called Sheila. Yeah, in the Lakota language. So there's, yeah. And they speak of the turtle, they speak of they speak of the world like millions of years. They speak in terms of like, not like in modern, what they call it, anthropology, archaeology, whatever. They talk about thousands of years, the beginning of man. Native Americans speak of millions of years. But it's hard to discern, this is very difficult to find clarity in all of this because they're not like so fortunate, at least that I know, like we are, to have a whole disciplic succession in all the literature. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to all the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Praise Devananda.
Jai.